I slow down as I turn onto my street, breathing a sigh of relief. It's one of those perfect summer evenings, the kind of night when you feel lucky to be alive. Sometimes I can't believe I've been married to Claire for 15 years. Other times it feels like even longer, like I've known her for 1,000,000 years. Either way, I can't imagine going through life without her. Lately, I've been getting the feeling that something is wrong, though. I don't know what it is, but something is different. It's nothing I can put my finger on. Just a look on her face once in a while, a hesitation in her voice, a slight pause before she answers a question. But it's enough to get me worried. Still, I try not to think too much about it. We've been through rough patches before. Maybe this is just another one of those times. When I pull into the driveway of our house, I notice Claire's car isn't there. It's a little odd, since she's usually home before I am. "Guess she's running late," I say aloud, parking next to her usual spot. It was strange coming home to an empty house. I was always the first one to get home after work, but I was so used to hearing my wife's footsteps following me in the door that the place felt lonely when she wasn't there. I took off my tie and walked into the front hallway, locking the door behind me. After hanging up my keys on the hook by the door, I noticed my wife's handbag wasn't hanging in its usual place. I checked my phone, expecting to see a text message from her, but there was nothing. "Claire?" I say, knowing what I'll hear in response. Nothing. The kitchen is spotless. There are no dirty dishes, no crumbs on the counter, no sign of Claire's breakfast. She must have eaten something, though. She always does. The newspaper is still on the table, unopened. I check the fridge. The chicken is still in the freezer. Claire was supposed to take it out to defrost. I consider calling her, but I don't want to worry her. She'll be back soon. I pour myself a drink and sit down at the table. Claire's words from this morning come back to me. "Don't work too late, dear. I'm cooking dinner tonight." I take a sip of the bourbon. It tastes good, but it doesn't help me relax. I feel a knot in my stomach. I look out the window and see our neighbor, Tom, watering his lawn. He waves at me, and I wave back. "Hey, Ethan," he says through the window. "Claire out for book club?" I stopped with the glass in my hand. "Book club?" She came by and picked up some of her stuff. I assumed they were going on a girls' trip or something. The bourbon turns to motor oil in my mouth. Claire didn't say anything about a book club retreat. "Right," I say, trying to stay calm. "I guess I forgot." Tom nods and returns to his watering, humming to himself. I turn away from the window, looking around at the house with new eyes. Everything feels different now. I walk through the rooms, noticing things I hadn't before. The dust on Claire's bedside table as if she hasn't used it in a while. The slightly empty space in the closet where some of her clothes should be. I pull out my phone and check it again. Still no messages. In the office, I see that Claire's laptop is missing from her desk. The calendar on the wall is blank. I sit down at my desk, feeling the weight of the situation settling in. I put the glass of bourbon down on the desk in front of me. The peaceful summer evening continues outside, the scent of flowers wafting through the open window. Everything is so calm and serene, as if nothing has changed. But something has changed. Something is very wrong. I just don't know what it is yet. I should feel angry, I think. I should feel worried. Instead, I just feel empty, like a part of me is missing, and I don't know how to get it back. I pick up the glass of bourbon again, take another sip. The ice clinks against the glass. I should call someone, I think. The police, maybe, or a lawyer. I need to figure out what's going on. I should call Claire, I think, but I know that she won't answer. She's gone somewhere, and she doesn't want me to find her. The lawyer. I should call the lawyer, I think, just in case, just to be prepared. I sit there for a while, thinking about what to do next. I don't have a plan yet. All I know is that I need to do something. I put the glass of bourbon down on my desk and stand up. I need to clear my head. I need to think. I walk into the kitchen, the ice in my glass, long since melted, watering down the bourbon. I look out the window, watching as the sun sets and the streetlights come on. It's getting late. 9:30 p.m. I looked at the lawyer's card for a long time before putting it back in my wallet. As I did so, I noticed it was getting late. I checked my phone, but there were no messages from Claire. When she came home at 9:47 p.m., I was sitting in the kitchen with my third drink in front of me. "Ethan, why are you sitting in the dark, man?" Her voice has a hitch in it suddenly. I turn on the light. "Time got away from me," I say, studying her expression. "How was the book club trip?" She didn't hesitate. "Great. Sarah did a really good job of getting everything organized this time around. She didn't have an overnight bag with her. That's funny, I say at last, because I could have sworn you said you were making my favorite dinner tonight. Claire stopped herself and looked at me. Did I? Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. This retreat came up last minute and I must have forgotten to mention it. I got up from the table and went to the drawer where we kept the takeout menus. As I was opening it up, I saw a piece of paper sticking out from underneath the menu for Golden Dragon. I picked it up. What is that? Claire asks, suddenly. Looking for the menu for that new Thai place, I say, hiding the paper in my pocket. I'm starving. She calmed down. Let me change first, then we can order something. She went upstairs. As soon as I heard her close the bedroom door, I unfolded the piece of paper. My love, I can still feel you inside me. I stopped reading. It wasn't my handwriting. I heard the shower being turned on in the master bathroom. Hurriedly, I began to go through the drawers in the house. I found more notes in her desk, hidden under a pile of old magazines. I got something from that Oak Street joint, Claire shouts from the kitchen. Is that cool? Yeah, I shout back, trying to hide my trembling hands. I put everything back where it was. Claire always knows when something's out of place. When she returns, she's wearing a robe. It's her favorite one, which I bought for her as a present for our 10th anniversary. She smells different than she usually does, not the typical perfume she wears. New perfume? I ask, sitting back down at the kitchen island. Oh, Sarah gave me some to use at the retreat. You like it? It was subtle, but I noticed how she avoided my eyes when she said Sarah's name. It's different, I say. She touches her wedding ring. She always does that. The doorbell rang, our food being delivered impossibly fast. Claire got up to answer it, taking her keys out of her purse instead of off the hook, where they were always stored. We ate dinner together in the dining room, as we always did, but it felt strange after everything. Claire tried to keep up the charade about her trip, telling me more details and going off on tangents. Not much of a talker, are you? She asks, wiping her mouth with a napkin. Sorry, I'm just a little worn out, I respond, picking at my pad thai. Work was kind of hell this week. Ah, I'm sorry to hear that, she says, placing a hand on mine. Her hand is chilly. After we eat, she offers to clean up, which is not like her, and I notice her sneaking glances at her phone. I'm going to shower, she says, as soon as the kitchen is clean. I'll be up in a bit, I reply, knowing I won't be sleeping tonight. When she went to take a shower, I took all of the notes out and read them. They were dated over several months. They were passionate, and they were not addressed to me. When she went to bed that night, I pretended to be asleep. She got under the covers and stayed as far away from me as possible, something I realized she had been doing for a while now. It hadn't been a few days. This had been going on for a long time. How had I missed it? I lay there, listening to her breathe, wondering if she was awake or asleep. A car drove past outside, shining its headlights into the bedroom. Tomorrow, I thought to myself, tomorrow I will start to pay attention. Tomorrow, I'll try to find out what's going on. I didn't sleep a wink. For the next few days, I obsessed over it. I tried to catch her talking to someone on the phone, and I looked through her text messages when she was in the shower. I tried to think of ways to catch her in the act if she was doing something behind my back. By Thursday, I felt like I had enough information to start looking for real clues. I've been keeping track of everything. All the suspicious behavior, all the phone calls, all the unexplained absences. I need evidence. I need to be sure. This afternoon, Claire left the house at 2 o'clock. She said she was going to get her hair done, but I knew she wasn't due for another appointment for a few more weeks. I waited until she was out of sight, and then followed her in my car. I stayed a few car lengths behind her and watched as she pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop. Just here for coffee, I say. That's it. I parked across the street from the cafe and looked through the large windows of the shop. I saw my wife walk in. She didn't go up and order anything. Instead, she went over to a table in the corner. A man was seated there, and I recognized his face. Tom, from next door. God damn it. She sat down across from him, and I snapped another picture. And another. And another. I felt like a private investigator taking incriminating photos of a cheating husband. What are you doing back there? A voice beside me made me jump. A parking attendant was looking in at me, and he didn't look happy. I'm just waiting for a friend, I respond. He should be here any minute. He nods slowly but doesn't press me further. I turn my head back to the coffee shop window and see Tom brushing a strand of hair from Claire's face. I take another picture. I feel a vibration in my pocket and take out my phone. It's a text from Claire. Hair taking longer than expected. Don't wait for me with dinner. I read the text message over and over and look up at Claire. She's not at the hairdresser. She's smiling at Tom, who lives a few doors down from us. He helped me get rid of a dead tree in our backyard just a couple of months ago. We've had dinner at their house. He has 3 kids. I don't understand. Claire says something to him and he laughs. Then he takes her hand and holds it in his. I take another picture. I want to get out of my car and confront them. I want to ask Tom if he remembers that time he helped me set up the home security system, but I don't. I just sit there and continue documenting the whole thing. After about 45 minutes, they get up from the table. He helps her put on her jacket. They go to the door together. I take a few more pictures of them leaving the coffee shop. They don't kiss or do anything suspicious. They're very discreet. When they get outside, they go their separate ways. I wait until they're both gone and then drive home. I just want to be alone for a while to think about everything. I don't want to make any rushed decisions. When I get home, I sit in my car for a few minutes. I look up at the house where my wife and I live together. She was happy when she left this morning. She was going to get her hair done. I bought her a new book that came out today as a surprise. It was laying on the kitchen table when I left. I look at my phone and go through the pictures. They came out good. In one of them, I can see Claire's wedding ring. I pour myself a glass of bourbon and sit down at the kitchen table. I take out the card for the divorce attorney and look at it while I drink. I feel sick and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to confront her without making things worse. Claire calls me on my phone. Hey babe, they're taking forever at my hair appointment, and I may get dinner with Sarah. Is that cool? I take a sip of my drink. Whatever makes you happy. You're the best. Love you. Love you too, I say to no one. I put the phone down on the kitchen counter and looked out the window. Tom's lawn sprinklers turned on, just as they always did at this time of the day. I began to write an email to a divorce lawyer, then paused to reconsider it. After a few moments, I said fuck it and hit send. The next day, I ordered a hidden camera from a security company and selected next day delivery. I was itching to figure out what was going on, but didn't want to tip my wife off that I was onto her. So for the next few days, I acted as if everything was normal. I pretended I believed she was going to dinner with her friend Sarah. I went to work as usual, and I tried not to let my suspicions show. In the meantime, I prepared for the worst. I have received the box from the security company. It looks like any other parcel, but inside is the little camera I ordered 3 days ago. Just in case, I tell myself, knowing it's not true. He hasn't responded to my email yet. I set up the ladder in the middle of the living room, right under the light fixture. The camera was tiny and easy to hide. I checked my phone and saw Claire had texted me. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Yes, you are, I say, repositioning the camera to get a full view of the couch. It syncs up perfectly, and I see a live view of our living room. I adjust the camera so that it's showing the front door as well as the spot where Claire usually sits on the couch to make her work calls. The sun is coming up by the time I'm finished spreading out the bank statements on my desk. I make notes on each of them, highlighting the unusual transactions. There's a lot of them. A little while later, I get a notification saying Claire has arrived home. Honey, she calls up to me. You're up early. Yeah, I reply, stuffing the statements back into the folder. I have a lot on my plate today. Claire was in the doorway, looking as if she had just put on her makeup. You work too much, she says from the doorway. You coming to bed? I smiled at her. Soon, honey. Just have to finish something up first. She blew me a kiss and left down the hallway. I heard the bathroom door opening and the shower turning on a moment later. The first thing I did when she left was to try out the camera. I turned on the live feed to make sure the angle was correct, and then I pressed the record button. It seemed to be working. The next few days I kept a journal of everything that happened. I saved it on my computer under a password-protected document. 3:15 p.m. Claire leaves the house for yoga, 3:42 p.m. Tom's truck, seen leaving his driveway, 4:17 p.m. Claire's car and Tom's truck, seen parked outside the Grand Hotel. 6:45 p.m. Claire arrives home, wearing different earrings. I checked the camera feed every night, watching what Claire was doing. I saw Tom coming over when I was at work. I saw Claire talking on the phone with someone. I saw her holding hands with Tom. I miss you already, Claire says into her phone one night, not realizing she's being recorded in perfect clarity. I sit in my office, watching it all unfold. Tonight, she repeats sweetly, he's still at work, always at work. I try not to laugh at the irony. I go home and we eat dinner as if nothing has happened. Claire does her best to pretend as if she wasn't kidnapped, as if she wasn't held captive at an underground facility this entire time. So how's Tom's garden doing? I ask, and she freezes, fork halfway to her mouth. Oh, I haven't really looked, she says eventually. Not much of a green thumb. I thought of the way she had hugged him in our living room yesterday, and how she had admired the roses he had brought in from the garden. I'd seen the whole thing on the nanny cam. Maybe we should invite him over for dinner, I say back. It's been a while. Claire hesitated and then said, maybe. Susan said they were going on a trip, if I remember correctly. Susan, Tom's wife, was currently visiting her ailing mother in Oregon. I'd discovered that through some clever detective work. That's a shame, I say, noticing Claire twirling her wedding ring around her finger. That night, I added more evidence to the file. Pictures, videos, credit card statements showing matching hotel receipts, text messages sent during yoga class. I received an email from the lawyer. He said he could meet next week for an initial consultation. I put a hidden reminder in my phone. As I was doing that, I heard my wife's phone buzz from the other room. She laughed, and I heard her start texting back. I checked the camera feed and saw her typing on her phone. I'll take care of everything, she says into her phone afterwards. He has no idea. I saved the clip, added it to the rest of the file, and closed the laptop. I would call Susan in Oregon tomorrow, I decided. It was only right for her to know as well, even if it would tear her life apart just as mine had been destroyed. The camera continued to record, even as we slept, and Claire was lying next to me in bed, dreaming of another man's touch. The next week was a blur of normalcy and deceit. I went to work as usual, kissed my wife, made love to her, and told her every day that I loved her. All the while, I knew I was planning on confronting her the following Tuesday. I just had to get my ducks in a row first. I couldn't leave anything to chance. When Tuesday morning came, I told Claire I had to leave for work early. It was a lie, but she didn't know that. I went downtown to the offices of a law firm I'd seen on TV. I sit down across from my lawyer, putting my folder on my knees. Mr. Marshall, Harrison says, fixing his wireframe glasses, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can say I've almost never come across a package so comprehensive. I laid out the papers on his desk, photographs, financial records, transcripts, everything carefully marked and labeled, cross-referenced, organized as best as I could manage. I just wanted to be thorough, I respond, my hands still shaking. He holds up one photo in particular, and I see Claire and Tom kissing in my living room. The time and date is printed on the bottom of the image. This was from your home security system? A recent addition. He raised an eyebrow. Does Mrs. Marshall know about these cameras? Our house? Our security system? I hate saying it. He nods. Good move, and you got it legally in your own home. The traffic outside his window never stops. Show me the numbers, Harrison says, grabbing the papers I've organized. I pointed to a couple of highlighted sections. Withdrawals from their joint account on the same days as the hotel charges show up on Tom's credit card. And you got these from where? Tom's wife. She's been helpful after I told her. What did Mrs. Davidson say? How did she take it? As well as she could, I respond. I showed her the photos. She took them and started to cry. She scratched into her palms with her fingernails. She said she wants a divorce too. Good. The fact that we have 2 simultaneous cases will help us. Any kids? The question makes me feel like I just got punched in the stomach. No, there was never the right time. Thank God. Joint property ownership? Our house is jointly owned. We have 2 cars, one of which is paid off. The other has 3 years remaining on the lease. We have investment accounts, retirement accounts. I hand him another folder. All the details are in here. He nods, rifling through the documents. This is very helpful, Mr. Marshall. You've done a lot of the legwork for me. A cloud passes over the sun. In the reflection of Harrison's glasses, I see my own face. I look calm, composed. What's the plan? I ask. We hit her with it, Harrison says. File tomorrow, lock access to all the shared accounts, demand that everything be split in your favor on account of her infidelity, for which we have documented proof. She's going to fight it. She will, but she'll lose. I got a text message from Claire saying she missed me, and I showed it to Harrison. We'll save it, he said. The more evidence we have, the better. How long? I ask him, putting the phone away, not responding. To file? We can be ready to go in a week, but we need to be strategic about this. He finds the calendar. We need to get Mrs. Davidson's lawyer on board. Strike while the iron is hot. I use that word intentionally. And until then? It's business as normal. Just don't let him know what you're up to. Harrison squints. You think you can pull that off? I thought back to the night before, when I had smiled and nodded along as Claire told me all about her yoga class. Yes. Okay, because if she gets any inkling that you know, she might move money, start covering her tracks. I get it, I say, though it sounds like someone else is speaking. He begins to explain the process, the dates, the paperwork, the procedure. I listen to all of it and commit it to memory as if setting a bomb to go off in my life. All right, one last question, he continues, lowering his notebook. Outside the monetary benefits, have you thought about what you're hoping to get out of this? I thought about it for a few seconds, then replied, I want her to experience what I did when I found out about everything. Harrison nodded. That, Mr. Marshall, I can do for you. I shook his hand and began to put the papers back into the folder. As I did, he gave me an envelope. Preliminary forms. Go through them this evening, and sign where necessary. He looks at his watch. My secretary will reach out to arrange our next appointment. I got into the elevator and pressed the button for the bottom floor. As I was going down, I received another text from Claire. She said she was going to pick up dinner. Did I want anything in particular? I told her to get whatever she wanted. As I drove home, I couldn't help but feel excited. This was going to be the best night of my life, the night I finally got my revenge. By the time I arrived, it was dark outside. Claire wasn't home yet. As I went upstairs to my office to get ready for our dinner, I felt a peculiar sense of relief. I knew it was going to be an interesting night. Sitting at my desk, I opened the envelope from Harrison's office and took out the paperwork. There was a lot of it, but not enough for my purposes. I took out a fresh sheet of paper and began to write the first letter. To Mrs. Peterson, from one truth seeker to another, I must tell you about your friend Claire Marshall. I attach a picture of Claire and Tom going inside the Grand Hotel, his hand on her back. Photos can be deceiving, you know, Claire says over breakfast this morning. If only she knew. I put it in an envelope and write the name of Claire's best friend on it, Jenny Peterson. The clock strikes 9. I hear Claire calling for me from downstairs. Ethan, are you coming down? We're going to the Hendersons for drinks. Yeah, sure, I say, stuffing the letter back in my briefcase. I looked in the mirror and made sure I looked presentable, gave my reflection a smile, then went back downstairs to meet my wife. There you are! What were you doing up there so long? Just wrapping up a few work emails, I say, getting up to help her with her shawl. The scent of her new perfume makes me feel sick to my stomach. The next day at the Hendersons' party, I see her talking to their friends, laughing and smiling. Tomorrow, I'll send my first letter to Jenny Peterson. You're quiet tonight, Mark Henderson says, standing beside me at the fire. I'm just tired, I reply as always. How's Claire's book club, he asks. I take a sip of my drink to hide my smile. I heard it was pretty revealing. The following morning, I drop the letter in Jenny's mailbox. She always checks her mail before going to the gym. Then I sit down to write another letter. This one is for Claire's sister, Sarah. Your sister's hiding something from you. The days go by. I keep sending out emails, letters, and messages. Claire's mom, her best friend, her cousin Rachel, her yoga instructor. Each one gets to see a different piece of evidence, a different betrayal. At first, nothing seems to change, but then, gradually... my wife says to me one night. Jenny's not replying to my texts. That's odd, I say, looking up from my newspaper. The next person to cut contact was Claire's sister. Sarah's acting strange, Claire says to me at dinner. She says she doesn't want to talk. Families are weird, I say. Trust me. The first public crack appears during a neighborhood barbecue when Jenny Peterson arrives, sees Claire, and immediately turns around. Jenny! Claire shouts, chasing after her. Jenny, stop! I moved up a little closer to the appetizer table and tried to overhear what they were saying. I can't even look at you right now, Jenny whispers, but it's not much of a whisper, loud enough for other partygoers to hear. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. Why would you do this to Ethan? To Susan? Everyone was staring at us now, and Jenny turned and walked away. Is everything all right? I say, walking towards her with a worried look on my face. She looked confused. I don't know what's going on. That night I wrote 3 more letters while she tossed and turned in bed upstairs, one to her yoga class, one to her church committee, and one to her favorite coffee shop. Over the next few days, she was kicked out of the yoga class, asked to step down from her position at the church, and was treated with disdain by her favorite barista at the coffee shop. "I think I'm losing my mind," Claire says one night, in tears. "Why is everyone behaving like this? Did I do something bad?" I held her hand from across the table and told her it would be all right, that it was probably nothing. But of course I knew it wasn't nothing, and I knew it would only get worse. More and more people would disappear from her life, and she wouldn't be able to understand why. Just like I couldn't understand why she had betrayed me. They would just be gone, and she would be all alone. The last letter was to her parents. It contained the most damning evidence I had. I drove to another town to mail it. 3 days later, Claire's mother called her. "Why would you do this?" I hear her yelling into the receiver. "We didn't raise you like this." Claire locks herself in the bathroom for a long time. I hear her sob in there and feel terrible for what I've done, but I know it can't be helped. This is the only way. After a couple hours, she comes out and says someone has been spreading rumors about her. "That's awful," I say, getting up to hug her. Who would do that? In the glass, I could see her reflection, clutching the man responsible for all of this. "I don't know," she whispers into my shirt. "But I will." I patted her hair. "We will sort this out," I said, not knowing how much of this was true, but I was sure I would find a way. I had more letters in my drawer, I had more plans, and I was going to take care of Tom as well. He would understand. The days after Claire's meltdown at work went by in a haze. While Claire did her best trying to sort things out at the office, I worked on the next step of my plan. I had gathered documents in my portfolio, ready to take care of Tom too. By the time Saturday came along, the heat wave had left our neighborhood, but the warm summer air was still lingering. I parked across the street from the Richardsons' house, my briefcase sitting next to me on the passenger seat, filled with pages of evidence. "Let's go," Claire says, opening her door. "Yeah, I just need to pick up something from my briefcase for work. Be right there," I reply, and see her walking toward the house in her summer dress, rehearsed smile on her face. The Richardsons' backyard is set up for a small, intimate get-together. Tom is already there, pretending to be manning the barbecue. His wife isn't there. "Claire? Ethan!" Linda Richardson is approaching us, holding a glass of champagne. "Great to see you." "Great to be here," Claire responds, with that little quiver in her voice that I know means she's scared. I looked at her closely and noticed the way people turned away from her and quieted down when she got closer. That was my work. "Ethan," Mark Henderson claps me on the shoulder. "Want a drink?" "In a sec," I tell him. "Gotta deal with something." I pull the portfolio out of my bag. It's warm to the touch, as if it's been waiting for this moment. I look at my watch. 7:45 p.m., just the right time to show them. "Excuse me, everyone," I call out, with more volume than I intended. People stop talking. Claire is in the middle of laughing at something Tom said. "Sorry to interrupt," I go on, stepping into the middle of the patio, "but I have something to say." "Ethan?" Claire chimes in, a hint of caution in her voice. "What are you doing?" I took the first picture out of the portfolio. It was the one of Claire and Tom entering the Grand Hotel. "I'm doing what you have failed to do," I said. "I'm telling the truth." I held up the picture so everyone could see it. For anyone who can't read that, it's from 3 weeks ago. Please pay attention to the time. "Stop this, Ethan," Claire said, stepping forward. "Like you stopped when I asked about your book club?" I pull out another photo. "Or how about when you were working late?" More people were approaching, curious to see what all the fuss was about. Even Tom had stopped barbecuing to come over and see what was going on. "Here's a good one," I say, showing a photo from my security camera. "This is the living room, Thursday before last. Lovely roses, Tom. Susan grow those too?" "All right, this is inappropriate," Tom begins. I ignore him, pulling out the bank statements. "Inappropriate? What's inappropriate are these withdrawals from our joint savings account. Do they match up with any hotel charges? Who wants to guess which credit card they match up with?" Claire's face had turned from red to white. "Please," she said. "Please what, Claire? Please don't tell everyone you fucked our neighbor? Please don't tell everyone how you've been deceiving us for months?" Silence, except for the sound of burgers burning on the grill. "I have the transcripts," I say, shuffling through the stack of papers again. Phone calls, texts. You came up with some pretty inventive lies, didn't you? Linda Richardson drops her glass of champagne on the patio and it shatters on the stones. Nobody bothers to clean it up. Anyone want to hear what they say? They're really interesting. About what a sucker I am, always staying late at the office while you two... That's enough, Claire says sharply. Okay, we get it. Do we? I say, looking directly at our neighbors. Hey, Jenny, did you know that Claire's been using your book club every week as an excuse? And Sarah, those trips to the mall with your sister? They never happened. Everyone looked at Claire, confusion turning to anger and hatred. Why are you doing this? Claire asks, her mascara beginning to drip down her face. Why did you do this? I say, pointing to her and Tom. 15 years, Claire. 15 years of marriage, and you threw it away for a quick fuck in a motel in the middle of the day. Hold on a second. Yeah, Tom, I've waited a lot of minutes. I've waited minutes and hours and days for you to take care of your lawn while you fucked my wife. How is Susan, by the way? Still visiting her sick mother in Oregon? He cringed at the mention of her name. I'm making copies for anyone who wants them, I said to the crowd, including Susan's lawyer. You son of a bitch, Tom says. Hey, I say, watch it. You shouldn't talk to a guy like that. You're the one who's been sleeping with his wife. Oh, right, that's me. Claire looked as if she was about to faint and grabbed a chair to steady herself. No one moved to help her. I think, Linda Richardson says into the quiet room, that it might be time for everyone to leave. Yes, I say with a smile, putting the documents back into my briefcase. I think I've made my point. As the group began to disperse, I heard bits and pieces of conversations. Did you know, this whole time... Ethan, Claire is standing by herself on the patio, hugging herself. I'll meet you back at the house, I call after her. Or are you going somewhere else? She doesn't respond. Tom is gone too, leaving his spatula on the ground next to the grill. On my way to the car, I hear Claire's first sob, just like I expected. I start the car. This night turned out just like I hoped it would, and it's only the beginning. I drive around for a couple of hours, enjoying the aftermath of the revelations around the dinner table. When I finally get home, the house is dark, and Claire's car is gone. The temperature has dropped significantly, and the summer night has taken on an eerie, unsettling chill. The next day there were no sprinklers coming on, no friendly waves or hellos. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Claire didn't come home that night. Her side of the bed was empty and I couldn't help but feel a little bit of relief. I woke up and started making myself coffee. My phone rang. It was Linda Richardson. Ethan, I wanted to see if you were all right. Thanks, Linda. I'm all right. Claire's at Jenny's place. Or she was. Jenny booted her out this morning. I watched the coffee drip down into my cup. Good to know. Just then, I heard a knock at the door and looked out through the frosted glass to see Tom's wife Susan standing outside. I need to call you back, Linda. Susan is standing on our front porch, looking no different than usual, holding a manila envelope just like the ones I've been sending out. I got here as fast as I could, she says, on the edge of rage. Please, I say, ushering her into the immaculately clean living room. You want some coffee? No, just tell me what happened. I went to my study and got my own portfolio. Susan sat on the couch. How long have you known? She asks. 3 weeks. How about you? Since you sent me the letter. She chuckles cynically. I've been staying with my sick mom because Tom told me he wanted some time alone to figure things out. I spread the items out on the coffee table, the same one where my wife and her lover had played footsies, not knowing they were being filmed. That's not all, I say, revealing more photos. Hotel bills, text logs, camera footage. The bastards, she muttered as she shuffled through the documents. My lawyer has copies of all of it. And mine will too, as of today. She glances up at me. You orchestrated this, didn't you? This public outing? This ruination of their lives? I took another sip of my coffee. The front door opened. Her key still worked. She stood in the entryway, wearing the same outfit as last night, her mascara smeared. Oh, she says, seeing Susan. Oh, God. Hi, Claire. Susan's voice is ice cold. Tom's not here, but you probably already know where he is. Claire's purse slipped from her shoulder and clattered on the floor. I can explain? Don't bother, Susan says, rising to her feet and stuffing the evidence back in her envelope. I've seen the photos and the bank records. How could you do this to me, Ethan? Claire asks, choking on my name. Good question, I say, placing my coffee cup on the table. I've been wanting to ask you the same thing. The doorbell rings again. I look out the window and see Claire's boss, Richard Montgomery, standing on my porch. Busy morning, I say, going to pick it up. Before I had even opened the door fully, Richard stepped inside and said, "We need to talk." "Richard, please." The board got an anonymous email this morning, containing pictures. He brushes his silver hair with his hand. Very revealing pictures. I sipped my coffee, hiding my smile. That email had been set to be sent just prior to the morning board meeting. "You can't fire me," Claire shrieks. "I'm the best account manager you have." "Were," Richard replies. Past tense. The board was very specific. Your position has been eliminated. Effective immediately. Susan watched Claire be put in her place with satisfaction. "Karma's a bitch, huh?" Claire sat down on the stairs, looking defeated. "This can't be happening." "It is happening," I tell her as I take out my phone. "And Claire, check your email. My lawyer sent something over to you this morning." A moment later, her phone buzzed and she looked down, her face going pale as she read through the divorce papers. "You're not getting half," I tell her. "There's a prenup with an infidelity clause. Did you forget?" Richard's face turned pale with fear. "I should leave," he said, slowly backing toward the door. "HR will send over your personal items." "Richard, no." But he was gone. All I heard was the sound of our front door closing. "I should get going too," Susan says, picking up her envelope. "My lawyer will be in touch, with both of you." Claire didn't answer. "Your car," I say, breaking the quiet. "It should be towed from the Richardsons within the hour. I called this morning." "Where am I supposed to go?" Not my problem anymore. I take my coffee cup and walk towards my study. But I hear Tom has a very nice guest room, when his wife's out of town at least. "You've ruined everything," she says. I hesitated for a moment, then said, "No, Claire, you did that all on your own. I just publicized it." The phone rang again. I assumed it was another neighbor, possibly calling to check in or to pry for more information. I ignored it and closed the door to my study, leaving Claire to her own devices. I watched Susan leave our house and head back to her own. A few houses down, I saw another neighbor, Linda Richardson, standing outside, talking on her phone. She must have been telling someone else about what happened. The gossip train had left the station. By the end of the day, everyone in the neighborhood would know about Claire's affair. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I had an email from my lawyer confirming that the emergency hearing had been scheduled for tomorrow. Everything was falling into place. Claire was still crying downstairs. I heard her footsteps as she walked around, probably trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, she left the house, slamming the door behind her. I watched her from the window as she walked down the street, carrying a small suitcase. I smiled to myself. It was all going according to plan. The next few weeks were a blur of rumors, accusations, and heartbreak. By the time Christmas came around, Claire had moved out of the house, and we were in the middle of a bitter divorce battle. Now it's January, and I'm standing at my window, watching Claire come back to pick up the last of her things. The day Claire moves out, the sky is gray. I watch her from my office window as she loads her things into a small Honda Civic. She doesn't get to take her own car, the Audi. That one is mine now, parked beside my own car in the garage. Harrison's paralegal is there to make sure Claire only takes what she's allowed to take. It isn't much, just a few bags of clothes and other essentials. Harrison calls me. "Everything proceeding as planned?" "Like clockwork," I reply back, having just caught Claire struggling with a box labeled personal items. "Excellent. Judge Thompson signed the final papers this morning. You'll have the official copies by end of day." When justice is well motivated and thoroughly documented, it works surprisingly fast. "Thanks," I reply. Claire glances up at me, and I don't look away. She does. And she turns back to her car, looking even more defeated than before. "Mrs. Marshall, that painting wasn't approved." "It was from my mom," Claire argues, holding a small watercolor painting. "All paintings were explicitly covered in the divorce agreement. Page 12, paragraph 4. Claire looked like she wanted to say something, but after a moment she just placed the picture back against the wall. Then I heard the familiar sound of a new message. It was from Susan Davidson's lawyer. "Tom signed the divorce papers this morning. Susan's getting everything." There you go, Claire, I thought. Now both of you are equally miserable. The paralegal knocked on the door to my study. "Mr. Marshall, we're almost done. Would you like to inspect the house?" Sure. She's in the foyer at the front door. Is that all? I ask the paralegal, not acknowledging the way Claire twitches at my voice. One more form to sign. Claire's signature looked nothing like it normally did. I didn't mean to get caught, I interject, to ruin everything we made. The paralegal leaves the two of us alone in the house which was supposed to be our home. You didn't have to take it all, Claire says softly. I didn't, I say, but you forced my hand when you took what you wanted. She looks toward the living room, where the camera is still lying in wait. The kids, she starts, need a normal life, I interrupt. And Judge Thompson agrees, so they're mostly with me now. I heard the honk of a car horn and looked out to see Susan Davidson's Lexus pulling up to the curb outside. The two of them had even planned this out together. Susan's just here to get Tom's stuff back from your car, I say, because you were so nice to take care of it for him. You did this on purpose, Claire said with a frown. I did, I reply, but you did a lot of the heavy lifting. I watched through the window as Susan stepped out of her car, Claire curled up further into a ball. Where will you go? I ask, not because I care, but because I'm curious. My sister, in Cincinnati. Sarah? I look at her. The one who testified against you in court and said that you were a compulsive liar? She let me stay, Claire said, in her guest room, until I can get a job. Funny, I thought. She couldn't have done that earlier? I watched from the window, seeing Susan take boxes out of Claire's car and put them in hers. All right, Mrs. Marshall, the paralegal says. We're ready for you. It's Miss Andrews, actually, I tell him. The paperwork just went through, this morning. Her wedding ring glints in the dull morning sun. That is still property of the estate, I say to her. She takes it off and sets it down on the console table. 15 years of marriage, just like that. Goodbye, Ethan, she says. I don't say anything, just watch as she walks out our front door for the last time. She never turns back, just continues to walk down the path until she reaches the sidewalk. Claire, are you there? Tell Tom his golf clubs are going to the youth center, she calls out. I'm sure some kid will appreciate them. Claire picks up her pace. A few seconds later, I hear her car door open and close, and then the sound of her starting the engine of her Honda Civic. She must have traded in her luxury car for cash, I think to myself. Claire peels out of the driveway. Anything else for you? Nope, all done, Mr. Marshall. Enjoy your divorce. The word doesn't feel as bad anymore, and I take it as a compliment. The house feels a little too quiet, but it's better this way. I walk through it, picking up Claire's wedding ring on the way, adding it to the box of jewelry she left behind in the settlement. My phone dings with one more message from Harrison. I just got the partnership tracking records from her firm. I don't think she'll have any grounds to sue you for wrongful termination anymore. I smile, sitting down at my desk to do some paperwork. The house feels empty, but I don't mind. It's peaceful. The camera in the living room is still recording. I decide to leave it on, just in case I need it again someday. You can never be too careful. 6 months passed quickly, and before I knew it, fall had turned into winter and then into spring. The house felt empty without Claire, but I had gotten used to it. The cameras were gone, but I still kept a close eye on everything. The neighborhood had moved on, and everything was back to normal. Until one day, when I received an unexpected message. The house is quiet when I get up in the morning and make my coffee. It's been 6 months since Claire left me, and the silence is no longer suffocating, but comforting. A text message comes in from Susan Davidson, a friend of my wife's. Just thought you'd want to know. Tom's car was seen at the Motel 6 off Highway 40, and Claire was with him. I put my phone down and took a sip of my coffee. Old habits die hard, I guess. Not our problem anymore, I reply back. The newspaper that I had picked up was still sitting on the counter, unread. The headline was something about a corporate merger. Life was going on, oblivious to all of this. The doorbell rang and I saw Linda Richardson standing out on the porch, holding a casserole dish. Ethan, mind if I join you? Yeah, sure. Coffee? By the way, I made some food for you, she said, tagging along with me. I made a lasagna. Thanks, Linda. How's Mark? Yeah, he's hanging in there. She takes the cup of coffee I hand her. Things have been pretty weird around here ever since I found out my wife was cheating on me with the neighbor and ruined both of their lives. She laughs a little nervously. Yeah, when you put it that way. My phone vibrates again. It's Harrison. Her last appeal was rejected. Something good? Linda asks, seeing me smiling. Loose ends. She hesitated, then asked, Have you considered dating again? I shrugged. Not really. I'm still getting used to being alone. Well, Whenever you're ready, she trails off, letting the rest of the sentence linger in the air. I noticed a moving truck backing into Tom's driveway. Susan must have sold the house, I realized. Change is good, Linda says, looking where I'm looking. Change is necessary, I reply, drinking my coffee. This morning my wife's keys are missing from the hook, but this time it doesn't bother me. All right, I should get going, Linda says, standing up and brushing off her skirt. I've got book club at 11. A real one this time? She smiled. Yes, very real, and no, there was nothing like that. Then she left. I took my cup of coffee and went into the study. I still kept the camera feeds running, even though there was no longer any need to do that. There was nothing to see in those rooms. I checked my email. Sarah, Claire's sister, had written to me. She keeps asking about the kids. I told her that she's not allowed to see them. I closed the email, opting not to respond. Some things were better left unsaid. The house was quiet, just the way I liked it. Since Tom and Claire had left, I'd slowly been taking over all of the rooms, redecorating them and making them my own. There was no trace remaining of their presence in my home. My phone buzzed once more, and I saw it was another text from Susan. Moving truck's here. Come say goodbye before I leave for good. I looked out the window and saw the moving truck parked in Susan's driveway. A few men were loading it up with all of her ex-husband's things. She stood on the front lawn, supervising them. Picking up my coffee, I went out my front door and down the steps of my porch. Susan saw me coming and raised her cup in the air, saluting me. The day was free of plans. I figured I would read the newspaper, maybe go for a walk. It was good to have my life back, free of the endless drama and conspiracies. Tom and Claire had lost everything, and I had gained so much. It was a good trade, I thought. A week would pass, and a new family would move in next door. I would see them playing in the yard with their kids, and would occasionally wave hello to them. The neighborhood would soon be full of life again, a happy, cheerful place. And I would be happy too, for the first time in a long time. As I went up to Susan, I saw her looking at the camera on my porch, then at the one on the corner of the house. She looked at me as I approached. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." I didn't say anything in response. What was there to say? We watched the moving truck pull away, and she waved goodbye to it. She got in her car and left as well, and I watched her vehicle disappear down the street, leaving the house empty and silent. I went back inside my house and sat down at the table to finish my coffee. The camera feeds were still up on my laptop, and I turned them off, realizing I no longer needed them. My house was empty now, and nobody would be spying on me anymore. It was a strange feeling, not having anyone to watch. For so long I'd been spying on my husband and my neighbor, trying to catch them in the act. And then I'd been watching Susan, making sure she was doing what she was supposed to be doing. All of that was done now. There was nothing left to watch. I went to the front door and stood on the porch, looking at the camera. I flipped it off, and it beeped as it powered down, its red light going dark. Going back inside, I sat down and finished my coffee, and began to think about what I would do with all the extra space in my home. There was so much room, after all. I could put in a home theater, a gym, maybe a sauna. The possibilities were endless. As I thought about this, I realized how nice it was to have a quiet house again. There had been so much chaos and noise lately, but now it was peaceful. Just the sound of birds outside and the breeze blowing through the trees. It was so peaceful and relaxing. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I felt like I could relax and be myself.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "Alright, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their IN. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.